Hi everyone, today let's take a look at Truth Social. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So Truth Social rocketed up 12% over $5 per share today, and this is on the back of news surrounding the short selling of Truth Social. There was concern over naked shorting, meaning that companies were not actually borrowing shares to sell the stock, they were selling naked without any shares to borrow. And on the back of that news, the stock did go higher, which kind of validates the potential that there was some naked shorting going on. And you can see here this week, the company informed stakeholders on how to make it difficult to loan their shares out short, making it more difficult for short sellers to actually borrow the stock and then sell it short. And then they made some references towards a potential short squeeze coming on the stock because of either naked shorting or the stock popping 12% against any people that are potentially selling it short and have to buy back their shares, which is going to force the stock up higher. I think it's pretty interesting to watch this with this company. Obviously, the fundamental value of the stock is way lower than current price. But you can see here, we dipped all the way down to 25, and we'll take a look at the actual charts later, but dipped to 25, closed around 22, and now we're back up to 46. So we've doubled since that low. So maybe there was some validity to the story that they were talking about. Moving over to fear and greed, it looks like we're just on the cusp of getting out of fear and greed. We're at 44 from 41. You can see this continues to trend up slowly. It is losing a little bit of momentum here, which is concerning. You can see we're actually back into greed on momentum, but strength continuing to hover back in extreme fear, breadth hovering flat. So mixed signals to say the least. Greed on momentum, extreme fear, and regular fear. You can see momentum. You can see the put call ratio headed back into neutral. Volatility still hovering there. I would expect that to spike up into the FOMC. And then safe haven demand and junk bond demand have not changed in several days. Moving over to seasonality, we got one more day of trading here in April. You can see we're expecting a slight pullback towards the end of the month or flat price action, and that seems to be what we're getting. I still think this is kind of shifted to the right a little bit, so we should see a little bit more bullishness. But based on the charts, slight down day going into the last trading day. And then moving over to May, you can see sell in May and go away is one of those sayings, and it is typically a pretty bearish period up until that last week of the month. Moving over to earnings, no major companies here today. Domino's Pizza beating on the bottom line, met on the top line. Overall looked okay, nothing major. And then for tomorrow, we have Amazon after hours, Eli Lilly, Coca-Cola, AMD, McDonald's, Starbucks, American Tower, PayPal, 3M, Super Micro, tons and tons of companies coming out tomorrow, with the big one being Amazon after hours. And then looking at pre-market for Wednesday, you do have MasterCard, which is a big one, obviously, and then you got Qualcomm after hours, Pfizer pre-market, CVS also pre-market on Thursday, Marriott, and that'll pretty much wrap it up for the Wednesday. Moving over to the economic calendar, basically nothing for today. But looking at Tuesday, you can see CPI for the Eurozone, definitely interesting. We also have Chicago PMI and consumer confidence tomorrow at 9:45 and 10 o'clock. And then Wednesday is the big one for the week. Tons of economic data, ISM manufacturing PMI, manufacturing prices, also have JOLTS data this week. And then in the afternoon, you got the FOMC statement and the Fed interest rate decision. Basically 100% chance that it's going to be a pause, but the verbiage is going to be important. They were awfully dovish last time, and then we got another hot inflation data reading. So it seems more likely that they're going to be a little bit hawkish, and that could absolutely send markets lower in my opinion. Moving over to Max Payne, you can see 500 is your put wall, 510 is your call wall. So we're getting pretty close to the call wall. Finished pretty much unchanged on the day. Total options, not a whole lot. I'm honestly surprised there's not more options going into the FOMC week, but there are a few, and they might impact markets. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the S&P 500, you can see on the hourly chart, we did grind a little bit higher, pretty much in that same channel here that we had on the Friday session. So grinding a little bit higher, got above 509.77, held above that level. So the next one would be 513.27. You also have some trend resistance up there. Momentum continues to tick to bullish on the daily chart, but we did get a doji on the day, 0.35, a little bit of upside. So this is the zone. We talked about it. We hit it on that Friday session. We hit the 21, we hit VWAP. We're right here. We're waiting to see what happens. Right now, seems like we're probably going to hit that trend line at least, which would be the next level, 513.27. Momentum and RSI say that we're probably headed that way. And then moving over here to the 4-hour chart, you can see that same price action, low, higher low, tested the ATRs. And we're still trending higher. We're above all the EMAs and SMAs here today, so overall, still bullish. Momentum seems to be fading a little bit, and you can see it here on the volume-weighted MACD. Slight bearish momentum. And then looking at it on the hourly chart, you can see that same thesis. Momentum is very little, grinding along that 8 EMA. The trend is still bullish, and we're hanging in there, but it does look very weak in terms of strength. You can also see the ATR stops have not moved in several candles. So right now, ATR is 507.42. If we see a push down to that level, take out those ATR stops, then we would be in bearish conditions. And you can see actually on that 2 o'clock candle, we did touch that level. Obviously, we didn't close below it or anything, but touched that level and did find some support in that zone. Moving over to the NASDAQ, similar thesis, sideways choppy price action. The level was a little bit higher than the close on Friday. You can see that next level, 433.24, was acting as resistance. We tested it multiple times. Again, on that 2 o'clock candle, we got pretty low, tested that trend line, found support there, and then we got a little bit higher after hours. Tons of volume coming through on that candle as well, which was interesting. And then looking at the daily chart, again, 0.4 to the upside. We're in that 21 in VWAP. So we hit the first price target, got that dip low, hit the 9, pulled back, 21 VWAP. Now we're going to see if we can hit that 55 EMA at 436.39. And then above that, I have 438. And that was really the bottom of that consolidation zone. So this is interesting here. We'll see if we can get into this area. Momentum and RSI still look good, so still does look bullish into that zone, but it is starting to encounter at least a little bit of resistance. Moving over to the Tasty charts, you can see we are hitting that 144 EMA, which is acting as resistance, which is at 432.98. So right on top of that level. Haven't been able to get above it. If we can get above it, then you have the upper ATR at 437.06, which would be solid. That'd be about $5 more to the upside of potential. And looking at these ATR bands, it does seem like we're going to get into that zone. So looks pretty good right now. You can see that first rally, flat ATRs. Typically you get a rejection, held the ATR stop as support, and then we've rallied up higher high, waiting to see if we can hit that next level. And that 436.83 area is right in line with the lows from this previous consolidation. So that does look like a good zone. And then looking at it on the hourly chart, again, you can see that momentum basically zero, testing those ATR stops multiple times here today. ATR stop is at 430.82 on the hourly chart, which is a pretty tight stop right now. That's only $3 lower, less than 1% lower on the hourly chart before we get a bearish reversal of conditions. So right now it is bullish. It does look bullish going into tomorrow, but pretty tight stop, so keep that in mind. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see both of these were pretty positive on the day. Russell up 0.8, gapped higher. It was a little bit choppy in the price action though. Let's look at it on the hourly chart. You can see we were grinding higher here, pretty consistent. And then we had that big wick down all the way into the 198.96 area. So it went down pretty heavy on that candle. And then it ended up getting bought up and going higher a little bit after hours. So choppy price action there for just a little bit. And then it was decent into the close and looks strong tomorrow based on this price action. So looks decent. And then looking at the Dow, similar. Momentum and RSI both look bullish. We are right at that VWAP and that 21 EMA, which definitely is going to be a zone of resistance, which you can also see here on the Russell. Zone of resistance, probably why we're starting to get some rejection from there. Next level, 201.88 on the Russell, and then next level here, 387.77 right at the 55 EMA here on the Dow. Moving over to stocks that moved today, we got Roku and Donald Trump Media. Roku was up 4% on the day, got very close to a level here at 55.59. That's an important level here for Roku. You can see last time we were in the zone, October of 23, went from that level all the way up to 108. So basically doubled, just short of doubling during that time period. Massive move. And this is a choppy stock. It's done this a couple of times for sure. But this is an interesting level. If it's going to hold, it really has to do it here. It's a pretty tight stop, 55.59. If that level holds, you're looking at about $65 at that 55 EMA. And you can see it's actually been consolidating here for a little bit. And then Donald Trump Media, this is the weekly chart. 3 weeks in a row of massive moves so far. Momentum on the weekly chart looks very bullish. And then jumping over to the daily, you can see that 12.4% move coming off of the 200 SMA, which ended up holding. That next level would be at $56, so another $10 higher from here, which is about 20% more higher. So looks like it's going to do it. Momentum is strong. Just be cautious in here. Absolutely, this could go anywhere, and it can go anywhere very quickly. You can see a candle back here of 88% on a single day. So absolutely could go straight to 56 or it could go straight back to 32. Either direction seems plausible. Moving over to the Mag 7, basically the same setup as everything else. Did go slightly higher, 0.45, basically the same as the NASDAQ, but momentum continues to swing to bullish. Volume decent, 349.21 is a level. We couldn't get above it here. 21 in VWAP, all right in that same zone. Let's look at this on the hourly chart just for a moment. You can see that trend line bounce there. We did get back above the 200 SMA on the hourly chart, which is interesting. So got above that, tested that level multiple times. That is bullish. Needs to hold that level. That 200 SMA is at 344.59. As long as that hangs in there, this should be going a little bit higher. And if it breaks this level, then we could be looking back at all-time highs up around 367. You can also see a highly traded zone there at 357, 358, right in that area. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, both of these putting the Mag 7 on their back here today. So Apple up 2.48%, big move. They got an upgrade from one of the big banks and that sent the stock way higher. Almost hit the level at 176.15, did hit the 55 EMA, couldn't close above it. So looks like a first test of this zone. Seems like it's setting up for a bigger move. If this zone breaks, then you're looking up at that 200, which is at 181.57. Definitely looks good there. And then Tesla, on the back of that news this morning, they got approval for their cybersecurity for their self-driving in China, which means they're one step closer to selling self-driving vehicles in China, which would be a massive margin grower for the company. And on the back of that, they jumped 15.3%, absolutely colossal. Gapped through all of these levels. Next level would be 197.75, momentum and RSI massive, huge volume on the day. You can see 242 million shares traded on the day, absolutely massive. And I would expect this to carry on. You don't generally see volume like that and then just see it taper off. Just like we saw back here, we saw massive selling volume. We did see a bear flag, but eventually that volume carried us much, much lower. So on the back of this, seems like Tesla is set to go higher. It seems like just the other day we were down in the 140s and now we're right back almost into that 200 zone. So Tesla was pretty oversold. Now it is going much, much higher. And it does seem like this is probably going to push that 200 at 221. And then looking at Microsoft and Google, the big earners for last week, you can see Microsoft was actually down 1%, gapped below the trend line, and that looks much weaker now. So you got a breakdown, retest of the zone, and a breakdown. If this follows through to the downside, that's going to be quite bearish, and it does kind of seem like it will. Next level of support would be 394.21. And you can see on that same day, we got a big move here on Google as well, 3.33%, gapped right to this trend line, fell to the next one. If this breaks down, we're probably headed back into that 162, 163 zone. Momentum is still bullish, volume still massive, and they did have a super good earnings. So I would eventually expect this to get bought up. It just seems super extended in the short term. And if we see Google and Microsoft both heading lower over the next day or two, if Apple and Tesla can't keep the Mag 7 headed higher, these two could start to drag it down. Moving over to AMD and NVDA, both of these headed higher here today. So AMD 1.78% headed towards that 21 EMA at 163 in my opinion. Looking at the volume profile, that 168, 169 area seems like the next zone of resistance. That would get you above the 165.36 level. Momentum is bullish, RSI is bullish, so looks really solid. It's had a big down move, topped out around 227. Fell all the way down to 140. Now we're headed back up. And in comparison with NVIDIA, you can see we did top out pretty much right around that same zone. Didn't fall nearly as far. We did get into the 760s. Now we're back into the 870s. Next level would be 909.59, and I do think we're probably headed in that direction as well. Momentum and RSI both look strong. Semiconductors definitely catching a move here to the upside. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, both of these headed a little bit higher here today. Staples up 0.32, still holding that 75.40 level. Momentum basically flat, but this still looks good. Big run, slight pullback, held support, rally, down a little bit after hours, but still looks okay. And then obviously discretionaries, massive gap higher, went right to the level though, 180.10. Talked about that being an important level. Couldn't get above that level, even with the Tesla move, so we'll see how that plays. Let's go ahead and extend this one out as well. And you can see on the candle today, we did test that level and then bounce a little bit more. Momentum and RSI still bullish. Moving over to transports and industrials. Transports has been falling for 5 days in a row. Not great, but it did test the lows from the Friday session and hold. Did close a little bit lower, but 64.89 continues to hold as support. Seems like a decent zone. If this is going to hold, you'd really want to see it do it here, and then we can get a little bit of a bounce back up to that 67.85 area. Momentum hasn't rolled yet. RSI hovering around 50, so be a little bit patient. And then looking at industrials, catching a strong move off of that 55 EMA, up 0.67. The concern here is that this is a breakdown and retest, and that does seem to be the setup. So you have a high, broke all of those trend lines, retesting them here. If this breaks down from here, that's going to be a significant move. See if we can find any volume. This was all-time highs for industrials, so not a lot of volume in here, which is definitely concerning. That would also establish a lower high and a change in trend. Moving over to breadth, really no change here. Looked bullish on the Friday, looked bullish here on Monday. Everything continues to look good. Pushing to that 51.75 level, that was the target. If we can overthrow that and get to 86, that would be great. That's probably going to be the top of this short-term run. And then looking at the 50-day average, same thesis, pushing to that 52.81. I would expect to hit that tomorrow, and then we'll see if we can get to 62.25, and then that'll be an interesting zone. If we're going to turn, I would probably expect it there. But right now, everything still looks bullish on breadth. Moving over to the dollar, you can see we did break right back down into the range, so we're still in a bull flag. We got above it on the Friday, held above it, and then we broke back into the range. We are still holding a higher low here at 105.50. We did not test the bottom of this range, which is definitely interesting. And you can also see a higher low setup on this RSI, so clear divergence, same or slightly lower price with stronger RSI, so this looks decent here. And if this breaks out into a bull flag continuation and the dollar heads much higher, that's going to be bearish for markets. Right now we are seeing bearish momentum and bearish RSI, but in terms of a candle pattern, this looks like a pretty classic bull flag. Moving over to yields, basically didn't move a whole lot today. 2-year almost completely flat. 10-year falling a little bit more than I would have expected. Momentum and RSI are actually bearish here now. The trends on both of these are still very bullish, but if this continues to fall a little bit more, that could give equities a little bit more room to the upside. Moving over to bonds, it looks like J&K is continuing to confirm rally. Did get above this range boundary here around 93.80. Back into that, waiting to see if it pushes towards that upper range. Next level to the upside would be 94.82. So J&K looking bullish, momentum and RSI is definitely bullish. So a little bit of a risk on play there. And then looking at TLT, gapped higher and rallied. 0.84 to the upside. Need to see it get above this trend line. This would be a zone where you would expect rejection if it's going to do it. 89.16 is also a level here. If it breaks, then you'd be looking at the 21 EMA right in that 90 zone. Still very much a downtrend, so don't forget. But this looks like an okay setup. If we can break and hold, then maybe we can see some bigger moves up to that 92.82 area. Moving over to volatility. Continues to fall here. We're at that 1470 level, technically below it by a few pennies. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish, VIX continuing to head lower. If this breaks here, then you would expect to push to that 1275 area, and then we'll see what happens. Moving over to my accounts, I made a few $100s on the day, which is good. A little bit over 400 on my main account, which is awesome considering that the NASDAQ was only up $1.75. I had puts going into the day and I rolled them up and held those most of the day and made some money there. And then on the IWM, this rallied super aggressive. I played with some puts and kind of got burned on that, which was annoying. Still managed to make a few dollars, but definitely annoying. In terms of a call here, I have a 220 credit on a 199 call for my covered position, and then I sold a 189 put spread to try to get back into it a little bit later or benefit from a rally if we can get a continuation on the IWM. So right now, still bullish with a little bit of patience at those resistance levels. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of DJT and is it going to reclaim those highs and head much higher into an eventual short squeeze, or is it going to dump from here and go back down to like $10. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.